night will I rise to give thanks unto thee because of thy righteous judgments, O Lord. I am a companion of all them that fear thee, and of them that keep thy precepts. The earth, O Lord, is full of thy mercy. Teach me thy statutes. Thou hast dealt well with thy servants, O Lord, according to thy... Okay. Good morning and welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. My name is Paul Strongini and we are continuing in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. We're beginning today. I previewed this somewhat, and let's read verses 1 through 16 and take it as a whole, because it's important. Because this is where he talks about hair. And it's a good, I think a very excellent takedown in some ways of the very notion that there exists such a thing as anyone who truly follows a literal and fundamentalist position. Though I guess if you took a very I don't know, I guess the position that, like, well, to be fundamentally sound in the scriptures is to try to understand what the intent of the author was first and foremost, as opposed to just blindly reading the text. And I would agree with that position. Except I think that that standard is not applied frequently enough. Meaning, people who claim to be fundamentalist and who believe the Bible ought to be interpreted literally will interpret the Bible literally and in a fundamentalist fashion in the places precisely where they wish to. But in places where they wish to exhibit flexibility and nuance and a sense of, context, well, then all of a sudden those things become meaningful. And so we've got to be very careful about how we pick and choose when to be nuanced and thoughtful of context, and when we're going to be very dogmatic about the text. And certainly I think there are verses in the Bible that are dogmatic and axiomatic, where it's just the verse stands by itself, just one tiny little verse without much context being just a timeless truth. There are verses that are just on their face. He hath shown thee, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of thee, but to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Though, again, I do think there's more to, let's say, pleasing God than that. There's more to what God requires of us than that, but that is an excellent distillation. And, a good foundation of thought, how one might approach God and what God is requiring of man. But, there's nothing in the Bible that doesn't happen in the context of the rest of the Bible, as far as, that one shouldn't use the wisdom we have learned everywhere else to not necessarily modify, maybe modify, but to mediate our understanding and what we are looking at. So verse 1 reads, chapter 11, "Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ. Now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things, and keep the ordinances as I delivered them unto you." Despite all the criticism, I guess what he's saying, the core of what I taught you is maintained. The problems they were having were things maybe Paul just didn't think that he'd have to talk about. You think you go over a bunch of stuff and like, yeah, I think I covered everything. Until you walk away and they say, well, what about this? And they start getting carried away with things that he hadn't expected. And people will do that. They will often take what you say in unexpected directions. I don't know how many times I've done Bible studies and then gotten feedback from people, and I'm like, wow, they got something out of the study that I did not put into it intentionally. But anyways, it's like, when you drew a connection between that and that, they just happened to be things I said in proximity to each other in the same hour. You made the connection. I mean, you could give credit to the Spirit. I have no problem with that, but it's not something I consciously am always aware of. And so Paul is pleased that they remembered the things he did teach them. I mean, he probably has in mind things like Holy Communion for one, because he mentions it, and the gospel for another, because I don't hear him saying anything like in terms of like, this is the gospel. I need to reaffirm this to you. I need to reteach you the gospel. Ordinances. I want to just define that as things that are ordained. And I'm sure in English that's probably a relationship that those words have. I was just curious. What's the Greek word used here? In chapter 11 to come up. Okay. Ordinances are paradosis, a handing down or over. Things which are handed over or handed down. The tradition. But I would have you know, I realize but I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoureth his head. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoureth her head. For that is even all one as if she were shaven. For if the woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for the woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of God. What the woman is the glory of the man. For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head, because of the angels. A lot being said, but I want to get down to verse 16 because it's important. Nevertheless, neither is the man without the woman, neither the woman without the man in the Lord. For as the woman is of the man, even so is the man also by the woman. But all things of God. Judge in yourselves. Is it comely that a woman pray unto God uncovered? Doth not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him? But if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given her for a covering. But if any man seem to be contentious, we have no such custom, neither the churches of God. Again, the whole letter, for the most part, Paul is writing to them concerning things which he commanded them, or are things which he's writing them concerning the things they wrote him. Now, here he says, at the beginning, look at, I'm glad you're following all the ordinances I teach and all the customs I've delivered to you. That's good. But apparently they asked something about, what about hair and coverings and stuff like that? And then he tells them, essentially, judge for yourself on one level. And he makes some other statements. We're going to go over all the statements. But then at the end he says, but if any man seem contentious, and that word in Greek is philonikos, fond of strife. If anyone's looking to pick an argument, we have no such custom, neither the churches of God. And I could say that to this day. Walk into going to a Baptist church, do the women all have their heads covered? Do they all have long hair? No. And the ultimate, aside from the other things which are going to offend people of the modern sensibility, but I'm gonna dive right in and say exactly what we're talking about here, because he makes a lot of statements which are pretty factual and straightforward. If any man seem to be contentious, we have no such custom, neither the churches of God. There was no such custom of head covering or of any particular rules. He talks about nature and things like that. There's some things by nature and custom, and does it seem comely to you? Judge for yourselves. And so this is essentially a matter of conscience. Because he said, if she wants to be uncovered, then let her also be shorn. And that doesn't mean shaved bald. That just means cropped close. You know what I mean? It's not saying a woman can't wear close cropped hair. It doesn't say that. It says actually let her be shorn. Unless he's being sarcastic, which is a possibility we can entertain. Let's look at all the verses. Now I praise you. Oh, we did that? Okay. They want to know about head coverings and stuff pertaining to women specifically. But, I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ. And the head of every woman is the man. Head of the woman is the man. And the head of Christ is God. There's structure of authority. Natural authority. God is naturally the head of everything. And the man is naturally the head of the woman. Naturally. It's funny these days that this is like offensive. If I talk about this stuff, this is the kind of stuff that got me driven out of the Cub Scouts for believing. It's in the Bible. And these are all Christian folks, but they hated me for believing in masculine authority. And, the only reason women have any thought of equality or honestly, quite honestly, many, it's not equality they want, but superiority. They want to be in charge. And have men step aside, because we have to step aside. Because if men don't step aside, women won't come into positions of authority. It won't happen. Men have to step aside. We have to make room. Now, it's not to say no position of authority. But what I'm saying is the highest positions, when the only time in history like you get female queens and stuff is when there was no man to take that position. Even back in the Old Testament, when Deborah rose as a judge in Israel, it was a shame because there was no men fit for the job. That's pretty destitute, and there's reasons for that. They were killing all the men. By nature, we have laws that protect people. See, we've built a society that protects weak people. That's why retarded kids don't get left on the sides of mountains. Or, crippled people, babies, like they used to just take the weak infants and just leave them out in the wild. Or toss them off cliffs. Or down into holes. They used to take the weak and dispose of the weak because the weak were not fit to, they couldn't survive and they were a burden, and that's how some people valued human life. And we have a civil Christian society in which, and in Christianity is that in which it is taught that in Christ there is neither male nor female. On a spiritual level, on a metaphysical level, male and female are all equal. And so also are the great and the small, the powerful and the weak, the rich and the poor. That before God all stand on equal footing. That's a Christian teaching. But Paul, as he says, does not nature teach you? And we live in a world in which everything is not governed by our principles. Everything is not under the protection of Christian society. But in the West, the women have become so accustomed to the protection of Christian society that they've begun to forget what nature is. You know what I mean? In nature, if you have a society headed up by women, that society will be invaded by one headed up by men, and the men you have there will be killed because they're worthless and weak, and they're dominated by women for the most part, and then the women will be taken captive and made into the slaves and servants of that other society. That's how it's been throughout most of history. If you don't have strong men in charge and leading, and men with minds of craft and understanding the evil of the world and of strategy and of aggression and willing to fight and kill if necessary to protect their homes and families, if you don't have men that are willing to do that, if you just have it headed up by women who think everything can be made peace and we can kiss and make up, you will quickly be destroyed. And so the natural way is for the man to head things up. He's got to step up and be the head, because he is the natural one who's going to lead and to be that way. Women have major problems. They've got, to bear a child, they're out of commission for months. I can't wait till they, in Hollywood they love to portray women as these sort of miracle warriors. We have this little 120-pound woman taking down guys my size, but probably not even that big in the movies. I'm like 6'3" and 250 pounds. And they're not that big. I mean, whatever, but these guys are significantly larger than these women, right? And they're like, ha ha, and they grab their arms and throw them. It's comic. Because I don't care how much kung fu she knows. It's like a big man will just snap her wrist because her bone density just cannot withstand the power of a well-sized, an above average strength man. It just can't. There's no competition. That's why society abhors male on female violence, even though statistically speaking, women commit approximately the same amount of, some would argue more, but approximately the same amount of violence towards men. But when a woman beats up a guy, it's funny. People think it's hilarious. Because that's why Tom and Jerry is funny. Because when the mouse beats up on the cat, it's the reversal of roles, which makes it humorous. Because that never happens ever in real life. In real life, the cat eats the mouse or tears it limb from limb and plays with it everyone ever see a cat with a mouse, it's quite brutal. Or a dog with a small rabbit. They don't have there's no like, oh, that wily rabbit. That's what makes it funny. Because these creatures in real life are absolutely at the mercy of all kinds of predators. And so it is with the female. And so the woman has a man as her head for her good and protection. and he is the authority over her. And, because, I mean, as far as in terms of strength and nature, the average man is stronger than the strongest woman. That's the average man. Average man. And so there is a natural order to things. And it's just the way it is. It doesn't mean women can't ascend into positions of authority, like, or competence, like science, legal, or in a society that protects women, that they can't have jobs. But the thing is, Paul didn't live in that world. So he though he believes and is written that there is neither Jew nor Greek, bond nor free, male nor female in Christ, we're all one. He wrote that. But he knows the world he lives in is not like that. And so while I don't think there's I treat my wife as an equal, but she manifestly is an equal to me in many ways. And in terms of husband and wife, I've made this argument to women who don't like it, but your husband is going to be, women are attracted to men who they find to be, what would I say, competent and power. Women don't marry down. They don't. Men will. Men will marry some poor girl because she's pretty, or some silly girl because she's pretty, or some, though you're making a mistake, you should marry an intelligent, for my money, marry someone intelligent. But you have to, if you want an intelligent, attractive, and competent, and if you want a lot of good qualities in a woman, you got to be kind of a very high quality man. Because women never marry guys who are brain dead, or I mean that metaphorically, who are not competent, not wealthy, and not, and who they view as beneath themselves. So while women are generally not marrying guys who they view as beneath themselves, they're viewing guys who they believe are above themselves. So why wouldn't he be the leader? Why wouldn't he be the head? It's like, well, he's smarter and stronger, and the strong thing is, in our society, is not that big a deal. Let's say stronger emotionally, physically, mentally, whatever. He is superior to me. By measure of competence, he's more competent. They look at that, and that's what they want. They don't want a man who is less competent than they are. Women, if their husband can't balance a checkbook, they'll complain endlessly about it. If if he is, deficient in anything, he'll never hear the end of it. Never hear the end of it. As far as if she's better, unless it's something that is he's not a good cook. Well, nobody ever said, "Oh, my man's not a good cook." They don't. That doesn't something that men get slammed for. It might be joked about. Okay, there's a minefield of a subject in my. I'm glad I don't have any. I can talk about it all day. Because my wife understands. And it's like this is nature. And so, if when women have a problem with it, it's a learned behavior. It's something that society is teaching them and telling them there's something wrong with that. Now, what's wrong is if men fail to step up, your society is going to be in trouble. Because on average, they should be outpacing women. They should be, by nature, outpacing the women. And if they're not, you have a major problem. And anyone who thinks otherwise, in this world, by nature, it's a big problem. A big problem. And that society is headed for deep, deep trouble. I mean, look at you've got other societies out there where they still are unapologetically, patriarchal and male dominated, and they are banging on the gates. You know. The head of every man is Christ. The head of every woman is man. The head of Christ is God. Everything has a proper order. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoureth his head. Now, I don't understand this, but for some reason, when a guy, like you come into church, what does a guy do? Traditionally. Not now, these days, the only hats men wear, at least for the most part, is like a baseball cap or something. But you're supposed to take your hat off, right? Whereas women are allowed to wear their hats, I think. I mean, the women don't wear a lot of hats either, right, these days. We don't wear a lot of veils. He just says covered. Covering, veiled, whatever. Whatever the fashion is that people cover their heads, but people put stuff on their heads for one reason or the other. I used to wear a hat when I was like 21. So I stopped it was like 3 years of my life. Well, I think it was about 17 I wore a hat a lot because someone told me I looked better with one on. And that'll get a guy to do, to flatter someone, and they'll repeat the action. And so I wore one for a while. I wore kind of a weird cap. It was like a baseball hat with no brim, basically. And I haven't since. I never particularly took it off at any time either, though, which is a funny thing, because I never thought much about it. Never really, this passage wasn't, no one ever really made much of a thing about the male aspect of it. But men take off their head because it's dishonorable. I guess, what does it go to? It must go to some sort of, for men, covering your head is dishonorable because men cover their heads for a few reasons. One, it may have to do with labor. And they'll often, I think of today, when people put a baseball cap on, they're protecting their face from the sun and stuff. But let me just go traditionally and throughout history. Men cover their heads or even veil them or hide their heads because they're doing, they're assassins or thieves or someone who wants to hide their face. In fact, if you ever go to certain neighborhoods and you look at stores' fronts, they will have signs in the storefront telling people to take their hoodies off when they come in the store because they don't like people coming in with their hoodies up. Because those are the people stealing from the store, keeping their hoodie down, hiding their face, wearing their hood, and then shoplifting, stealing, whatever. It's like a quick sort of disguise, hide your face. Men do these things more often than women. It's the primary reason a man hides his face is to protect his identity because he's up to no good. So certainly the tradition comes down that then you come into the church, you come to pray or to speak in the name of God, you take your hat, you uncover your head and show them, who are you? And in a sense, you dishonor your head. He uses the term head here in several ways, right? He talks about our physical head, but there's also our symbolic head. The head of every man is Christ. And by praying or prophesying with my head covered, I'm dishonoring Christ in some way because I'm not standing up there and being ready to be judged for myself, speaking my own name. That's one of the reasons, on the internet, I don't know about never, but I mean, as far as I never now, but in the past I may have used handles early on when the internet, because everyone was using handles. But pretty early on in the internet, I mean, literally, I think before the 2000s, I stopped using handles and always operated with my true name. In fact, my first album I did anonymously. Like Oracles of God is anonymous. I made this big deal about it, which was hilarious if you think about it, because at the time Paul Strangini was about as anonymous as I could get. There was no name. I had no name at all. So being anonymous, I mean, call myself Paul Strangini was like, oh, it's him. It was stupid vanity. All right? But I go around in the world uncovered. I don't operate under fake names or handles. When I speak like a comment or something, I speak it in my own name, because I don't want to because by covering myself, it allows me the temptation of doing things and saying things that I don't want to be associated, that I may not want to be associated with me. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people, they get out there, they say controversial things, and they don't want to do so in their own name because they're afraid of retaliation or whatever. I mean, I understand, because people have, they have on the internet doxing and stuff. And I always think it's funny. People have tried to say things to me like, your address, and I'm like, this is public information. It's not like I'm not hiding. I know this is available to the public. I know. Then what are you gonna do? Come out? And it's not a taunt or a threat. It's like, but it's like, it's not. I don't know. I never thought of anything so pathetic as that when I had a friend in the elementary school who liked a girl, and he'd go riding around in her court, and kind of, there's her house, and hang around, and it's kind of pathetic and creepy to go stalk in someone's house, or to try to bully someone for their opinion by giving away their personal information is it's like, what a low blow. Say, my personal information isn't secret. Just like any public, I mean, because there are all kinds of public personalities of people, but those people, in their lives, they have security. Because there's nobody who's totally hid. Your anonymity is an illusion. If they want you. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you, are just going about your business. Like, to this point, though I've gotten threats from people, or, people have threatened me. And, not recently here. Actually, it was actually been a while since I've gotten any good threats. But, but if someone seriously wants to go after you, or if, let's say, the world wants to go after you for something you said, they'll find you. You can't hide. So as a man, I don't hide. My head is uncovered. Here, take a shot at me, if you dare. My head is over me, and I trust him. I trust him also, and I use my manly wisdom to protect my home and family. So that's that. Now, every man praying. So we uncover our heads. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoureth her head. For that is even all one as if she were shaven. And that means close cropped, I believe. And it doesn't necessarily mean like completely bald, but like, women sometimes wear like that, spiked kind of real short, like women can cut their hair that short. They do sometimes. I don't think it's a particularly attractive look. But what he's saying, if she does like the man, well, first of all, a woman doing the same thing with her head uncovered is dealing with a different dynamic. She dishonors her head in that the head of the woman is the man. And a woman doesn't cover her head for the same reasons a man does. He doesn't cover her head for as a sign of their maybe occupation or whatever in general, but they covered their head in humility to basically, a lot of times to hide their beauty, quite frankly, and to kind of tone things down, to come into church and not make it about, look at me, and to not be all about a display of her glory, so to speak. A woman's beautiful hair unfurled. They say, like, let your hair down. Like, women, they let that, because when a woman who wears her hair, like my wife wears her hair up, and when she takes it down, she doesn't even ever in public take it down. Like, I haven't seen her wear it down in public in years. But it's very nice hair. And women have often very nice hair, and so they cover their heads. Now, he goes on to say that her hair itself is given as a covering. And that's for like a different reason. Because like I said, if she's going to not cover her head, then it's even, she might as well be shaven. If you're going to take it off, take it all off. Because and I'm sympathetic to this idea in a sense because, women can't have it both ways. They want to be equal and they want to have all the same things as men, but they still want the protections. They still want to be, they want to have preferential treatment in terms of child custody. They want preferential treatment in many places in life, but at the same time, they want to be equal. And what it is they want to be equal in every area. They want to be made equal in areas where they can't compete. And I'm not saying this of all women. I'm just saying of the activist women who are trying to push a feminine agenda. They are anti-feminine agenda, honestly, because there's nothing feminine about it. Feminist, I should say. Feminine. They hate femininity. Why do you think they show tiny little women beating up a bunch of big guys? That's anti-feminine. It's like, look at, a girl can be powerful like a guy. Like, a woman's actual power doesn't lie in those things. Like, no girl, is ever going to grow up to be able to do that. No girl. So they say to girls, here's an impossible standard of what it means to be a powerful woman. To do kung fu on big men. And no girl will ever grow up to be that. But I guess the symbology creates basically this delusion. You can be every bit as powerful as them. You can beat up big guys. And they can't, so they brutalize them in other ways. They use the law. They use the law to try, and at least that's the direction we're headed, believe me. That's what they want. A woman's head uncovered, she might as well be shorn. That would be better. You want to have it both ways. You want to be, I want to take off the veil and I want to have my gorgeous hair flying in the wind. And like, take it, we don't want to be distracted with your hair. Shave yourself. Just cut your hair. You want to pray and prophesy? You want to be like a man? Then be like a man. Cut your hair down. You want to be a warrior? Live like a warrior. Cut your hair. You know what I mean? Take your makeup off. Put on some decent clothes. You know what I mean? Dress like a man. If you want to be a man, then be a man. Take on a man's responsibility. Take on a man's burden. Take on all the garbage men have to take on. For if the woman be not covered, let her also be short. Like it says, he says, let her have short hair. But if that's shameful, if it's a shame for a woman, she'd be, I can't cut my hair, that would be shameful. Because he's talking about customs. We don't have customs like this in the churches, Paul said. All right, we don't have these customs. He's just saying, well, there's certain things that are by nature. And you should take account of that. And also be aware of society in general. Is it a shame? For who? Again, he's saying, judge for yourself. He says that later. Is it a shame? Are you ashamed to appear with short hair? And these days, it's not such a big deal, right? But there were times when to have your hair cut short for a woman was like, I remember seeing some World War II film where they did that to women who had been sleeping with the Nazis. They like cut their hair short and they cut off their hair as a sign that they'd been sleeping with the enemy. They've been traitors. That's what they've been doing. So they cut all their hair off. But what, I don't know what that had to do with what they're doing, but apparently it was to shame them. So he's saying, if they're going to prophesy or pray uncovered, they might as well just cut all their hair off. Just cut it off. Then be like a man. Uncover your head. Take responsibility for what you're saying. Take responsibility. Don't be uncovered. But if it's a shame for you to cut your hair, I don't want to cut my hair, then put your veil on. You're I want to take it off. It's like, what I'm saying? It's like they want to be able to pick and choose. It's like your hair is a covering already, by the way. It already is a sign of your weakness. For a man indeed ought not cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of God. Show yourself. You're standing up there. God made man in his image. In the image of God made he him. Male and female made he them. But the woman is the glory of the man. It's like, here's the thing. As I've commented, it's like, I don't know that in heaven, in the kingdom of God, it's they will neither marry nor give in marriage. They will be as the angels. The angels always appear as beautiful young men. All right? Which to me is sort of asexual. There's not a lot of sexual dimorphism in angels. Meaning, when you see like a hyper masculine man with like big rippling muscles and that, it's like, I don't really think any angels look like that. Like that. And men tend to like that better because they feel like it makes them look strong and intimidating. And some women like that. I've heard from a good number of women that they're not particularly attracted to that. And also to like when guys really cut their fat content down. And I wondered about that. Like why even studies have shown that women prefer men to have, they call it dad bod, which is strong but like not too cut. This is an odd subject, but it made me think. It's like, I wonder if that isn't because throughout history, men with that look were generally slaves or manual laborers. And so it's got a strong association with malnutrition, not well fed. Like a guy who is totally cut, it looks like he's barely got enough food to feed himself. A man with a little weight on him looks like he's able to provide more food than he can consume. I mean, more food than his body needs even. It's the way a provider looks. He's got he's a little less gangly. You know what I mean? Maybe that's why that is. I mean, it's unmistakably masculine. But what I'm saying is, like, I don't know that sort of overly muscled frame is anything that anyone's going to have in the kingdom of God. And there'll be no need for breasts or wombs or perhaps penises either. All the sexually dimorphic features, the things that make us differentiate as sexes within the human species, are on the table. They may not exist. I think in movies even they've portrayed angels as just having like a big nothing down there. No entry point, no probing thing, but nothing. I don't know. But certainly they will have no need of such things, right? And a woman has apparatus that is meant for bringing forth children. A lot of the things about a woman that make a woman glorious in the eyes of a man breasts, shapely hips, and all that stuff, right? All the things that men drool over are totally only, they are the glory of the man. It's the thing that men glory in terms of women. And the humanity, you know what I mean? A woman, like, that's totally unnecessary. It's like it exists for men. You know what I mean? To attract them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? And again, do I have to get, a woman is the glory of the man. Man was created first and the woman afterward. And not the man for the woman. No, but the woman for the man. The man is not of the woman. Actually, ultimately speaking, man does not come from woman, but woman comes from man. The man was the first idea. A man. And the idea, and the woman is the reproductive end of things. The man was not created for, she needs someone to help and protect her. Nope. He needs someone to help him. She was made for him, to help him. Though, they were made for each other. I'm all right with that. But I'm just saying. This is what Paul's saying. This is how nature works. And then Paul says this, which is a verse people ask about all the time. Well, what's this mean? And I ultimately don't really know. I mean, it's like definitively, do I know what this means? No. For this cause, because of this sort of, there's something that he's saying here. Go back. Because I read this and I kind of want to get past it because I feel like the more I dwell on this subject, the more I am. The more like the world is going to be like, wow, what a sexist pig. You know what I mean? But it's like, I don't know. He's saying there's a natural order, there's headships, and so on and so forth. And for though it's like I said, the king is the servant of all his people. You know what I mean? And the man does serve the woman. I mean, I gotta work and toil and build up my house, and my wife's gonna live there and raise children. And it's like, but she depends on me. And in that sense, I am her servant. And Paul talks about this when he talks about the sexual relationship between the man and the woman, that they don't belong to themselves anymore, and that they render to each other the benevolence due, as he coined the euphemism. Right? And I was not created much to serve her, as she is by nature my servant. And like I said, that tendency of women to always marry up means that is a perpetual thing. Because women will seek men that are above them. They are more attracted to men who they see as of higher status by whatever measure they're measuring things. Whatever measure they measure men by, they are most attracted to men of higher status. They find them most attractive. That doesn't mean they'll necessarily choose one like that, because they may see themselves they may esteem themselves unworthy of someone of such high status. And there may be, for the best men, there may be a significant amount of competition among women. Just like for some of the most attractive women, there's a lot of competition with men. Often. Not always, but very often. And, and that's in more of a closed society, closed group. But in a big world like this, it's not so, it's not so cut and dry. But women generally are more attracted to men who they feel they can look up to. So if a man is not in the natural head, and she is not his natural servant, there's something out of order. And it probably will not work out very well. See, like, I'm of the opinion that a woman ought to feel herself her husband's servant. And if she does not feel that, there's an imbalance. There's something, it's not something you can just say like, well, be that. A lot of times guys will be like, well, she's got to obey me. She's got to, is it not respect? What is the word I'm looking for? Obey. Respect is one more, but it's like, yes, respect my authority. And stuff like that. You gotta respect my authority and blah, 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 blah. If by your own power you can't enforce that, meaning by being more respectable, right? Unless she's just, so lacking in insight and intellect that she can't see that you're the better, if that's just something she just can't comprehend, that's a problem. But a man should be able to establish his own rule without having to resort to like, well, the Bible says you should. That's my opinion, because this is always couched as being something that is by nature. By nature. Not by, it's like imposing unnatural constraints. Like if I have a woman I can't rule, if I can't rule her, then like we might have made we're in a tough position now. Well, either I'm not stepping up, I might not be stepping up, and also in some ways, sometimes society cripples them and they think they can't step up. Like they shouldn't take control. Like, well, it should be equal. I should honor her opinion as much as mine. I listen. The king may be the greatest man in the land, but he should listen to his advisors. And my wife is my closest and most valued advisor. I certainly listen to her opinions, but I'm ultimately going to judge them, for better or worse. But if we're going to take on the average, my judgment's better. Period. That's nothing against my wife. I consider her a very exceptional person, but I'm more. Period. So, the man was not created for the woman, but the woman for the man. And for this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels. Now, power is referring to what we're talking about, some sort of covering. In Greek, the word power here, it's probably exousias, because I believe it means authority. Let's see. Yeah, exousia. She should have authority. It's like in exousias means delegated authority. Where is it? Where is my verse? I'm just looking at Bible Hub. Power. Okay, there we go. So, the veil, the covering of the head, is some sort of sign of authority, and perhaps relating to the idea that she is a married woman, having her head covered. Or, let's say, if she's an unmarried woman, she has her head covered in respect to her husband, or her father, I mean. A woman ought to be under some sort of... The idea of a covering means your head is under something else for a woman. It was to hide her, saying she's got a covering over her. Do not look on her. She doesn't belong to you. You know what I mean? The woman was created... The man wasn't created for the woman, but the woman for the man. Men are always looking around for a woman. You know what I mean? They want them. And a covering is a good way of saying she's not on the market. There's nothing to see here. And that often is the purpose. I mean, look at Islamic societies. Why do they wear those things, those burqas, right? To completely hide the woman. Don't look here. And they've taken it to kind of a crazy level with because it's like if a woman isn't wearing one in some places, it's like she's inviting rape. I don't know about that. We ought to expect more of men than to just randomly rape, but women should not expect more of men as far as they should fear, because certainly if you go to a country that is outside the West, you better be careful. I mean, it's like in the West, women get so used to just wearing their shorts or a t-shirt, being scantily clad, and think it's okay, which we've given them every reason to believe that because we behave civilly. In the West, men only have problems. Our big problem. We have yielded that a woman who is exposing herself is not to be presumed a prostitute plying her wares, right? We don't believe that. And it shouldn't be regarded as such, right? But to say it isn't provocative is wrong, and it is also quite foolish. Because, you will only prevent so many rapes by teaching men to be good. You know what I mean? By teaching men to be good, you might prevent someone like me, who has a great deal of restraint, fears God, is respectful of other people. I would never rape anyone. Never even got close. Wouldn't do it. Even in my young years it's like when I asked my wife if I could kiss her. I didn't even kiss her without asking. It's not very romantic, I suppose. Can I kiss you? But I asked. You know what I mean? Because that's my nature. But there are many men by nature who are not so inclined. They don't want to ask. You might say no. They'd rather just take it. They'll just do it. And young girls that go about uncovered, without authority over them, without any signs like, it's like, without putting things on that say like, hey, I am not trying to get your attention. Because again, there used to be this trope about, in rape trials, they'd be like, well, what was she wearing? And if she was dressed a certain way, they would suggest that she was asking for it, which is not fair. But it's not fair to say that she wasn't, that she's asking for it by the way she's dressed. But the thing is, if you don't want to be raped, you gotta understand that there are men out there for whom the common decency that many men will subject themselves is no restraint. And you will draw their attention, their unwanted attention, and things will happen to you before you have a chance to really consider whether what you did was wise. You know what I mean? So there's a certain amount to which men, I'm a perfectly tame and harmless gentleman. But not all men are so. And they never will be. So if you don't take some responsibility for it, you will find yourself at the short end of someone evil. Someone evil will take advantage of your foolishness. Now, what that has to do with angels, I'm over. Well, I'm not quite yet. I got a minute. What that has to do with angels? Well, one, it means messengers. Angels is it means literally in Greek messengers. Whether it means heavenly angels, if it means heavenly angels, people are going to go back to Genesis 6 and start talking about angels from heaven coming down and being with women. Okay? Because that's a doctrine that some people hold. And it's not without cause that text is interpreted that way, because there's definitely strong reasons that people might interpret that text that way. But aside from that, in this context, it would seem jarring that it would be like, because the angels might come down and see you. I don't know. They say sometimes, I don't know if he means it maybe like in a euphemism. Like some people have, by entertaining strangers, have entertained angels unaware. What kind of messenger are we talking about? I don't know. So I'm going to let that one just, you make of it what you will. Some people say, because of the heads in the church, the authority, the angels, like to the angel of the church of Ephesus, right? Because it's referring actually to the person who is the messenger of that church. Because the word angelos does not always refer to a heavenly being, though it usually does. Nevertheless, neither is the man without the woman, neither is the woman without the man in the Lord. Man and woman are a matching set. In the Lord, we can't get along without each other. Like not just through marriage, but there is, our whole society is built on the male-female relationship. That's why we used to protect marriage. That's why society used to sanction marriage. Well, society still does sanction marriage. But now, since it's sanctioned other stuff that has nothing to do with marriage, the whole thing is devalued. But it was already devalued with the easy divorce and all that. So, as far as society, I don't know, society. In the church, you got to live in whatever society you're living in, whether it be moral, whether it be immoral, whether it be Christian or otherwise. And we get so attached to living in a pretty Christian society in the West, we forget that we did not come out of a Christian society. We came out of Christianity started with the Jews who were hostile and went into with the Gentiles who were also hostile. I mean, there was a great hostility, especially among pagans, against Christianity. And so as the woman, what he's saying is, he's trying to take back a bit of what he's saying about, he's very hard line about, hey, the woman is of the man, she was made for the man, and there's all this danger inherent in womanhood, weakness and danger. But he's saying, as the woman is of the man, even so the man is by the woman. The man needs the woman. I can't come into being without a woman. Even though woman is of man, and a byproduct, if you like that term, though that sounds pretty cold, right? But whatever. It's a byproduct of the need to, the things that make a woman unique are parts of her biology that are for making babies. And then he says here, judge yourself. I really want to just get these 16 verses out of the way, so I'm going to push it a bit over, okay? Judging yourselves, is it comely that a woman pray to God uncovered? He's saying, use your own judgment. Don't, it's a matter, on some level, it is a matter of conscience. Is it comely? Is it appropriate? That's what that word means usually. In verse 13, comely. Prepo. I wonder if that means proper, whatever, or preparation. To be fitting, proper, or suitable. Is it suitable? Is it proper? A woman pray without a head covering? In our society, do you ever go to church and see women with veils and hats all the time? I mean, is it something they do all the time? We don't do it all the time. So I'm saying. But if a woman have long hair... Oh, wait. All right, here's a verse. I'm going to briefly touch on this one. We already covered verse 16. This is the last thing we really have to deal with here, and we can put this passage behind us. Does not nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, is a shame on him? I remember people saying, oh, men can't have long hair. Again, this is not the custom of the church or anything, but we're saying it by nature. If I have long hair, men don't wear their hair long. There's a lot of reasons. For historic reasons, men have kept their hair short or kept it tied or somehow... like men don't wear their hair long unless they're in hair metal bands or what. I mean, like we have today's societies where a lot of these boundaries are crossed because of the unnatural order are well, because the state of unnature brought about by our legal system. So men could wear long hair and suffer no ill effects. But you can't go running through the forest with long hair hunting wild boar and stuff, or fighting in battles. Though at times men in barbarous societies grew their hair long. Though for battle, they didn't wear it down. And also there's a difference between long hair and long hair. Like what we call long hair, like, for some people, like my hair might be considered, not really right now, it's actually, but it's not short. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to, I remember someone, literally a Christian, told me they couldn't believe that the Shroud of Turin was Jesus because the guy has long hair. And Paul said that was a shame. How could that be so? In nature, there's a lot of reasons why that's not possible. But, and just like, and say, well, what about Samson? He had long hair. Why wasn't that a shame? Wasn't it a shame that it was cut? It was. But Samson's long hair being his strength was an ironic thing. Just like Ehud was a man left-handed, and there was all these weak things in the book of Judges. There was a woman. There was, and one of the things that Samson did was he slew a bunch of men with the jawbone of an ass. Like, it's not a very great weapon. You know what I mean? It's not the greatest thing. It's not your first choice. As far as like, I need a weapon. The jawbone of an ass. It's not your first choice. And so having long hair to be your strength was ironic. Because, in our military, we cut men get their hair cut. Because hair gets in the way. It gets caught in things. In fact, Absalom, the son of David, when he was fleeing, he had long hair. And it got caught in the tree. And so he was dangling from a tree by his hair. His hair got entangled in the tree, and he got pulled off his horse. Hair can be problematic for a guy. Like for a guy, having no hair makes him more dangerous and more formidable. You know what I mean? In the things that a man excels in, hair is absolutely unnecessary. Men go bald and it's fine. They don't need hair. If a woman were to go bald, it's like it's a disaster for her. As far as if a girl in her 20s started exhibiting male pattern baldness, it starts creeping back and she gets a big bald spot, it'd be humiliating. It just, even in our modern enlightened society, it'd still be humiliating. People would try to be sympathetic and overcome nature. But in general, it's humiliating. That's why they need sympathy and people to come to their side and be supportive. If it wasn't, then they wouldn't need supportiveness. People don't need supportiveness in things that are by nature beneficial, good, and normal. Like I don't need any people to be supportive of me being tall or strong or any. I don't need like, oh, Paul, let me give you a pat on the back and make you feel better about your whatever. If it wasn't a deficiency, then there wouldn't be this like, let's be understanding, let's be supportive. We only need support when we have shameful or untoward things. So that's why when a teenager wants to grow his hair long, he kind of needs, let's be supportive, honey. He wants to be in a band. And it's something people got to be like, oh, we got to understand why. And it's not forbidden or anything. It's just not a natural state. And often it could be an indicator of like, I have the ability to do this. Kings might grow their hair long because they can. They have the luxury to do this. Just like, I think in our society, it's kind of, they're trying to change, some people are trying to change it, but it's a shame to be fat. Whereas in other times, it was sort of like, well, anyone who was truly fat or often were too wealthy, but like, it's a sign of good health to be a little overweight, a little. So I have plenty. So they're advertising you're well fed. Means you have excess. You could raise children because you're able to raise more than you need to survive. But if a woman have a long hair, it is glory to her, for her hair is given her for a covering. Her hair is already sort of a covering. It's glory unto her because of this. So it is a little bit of a confusing passage, and I don't want to dwell on it a second day. I don't. I've said enough about it. And even in reading this, I see like some mild contradictions. The verse I want to emphasize about all this, talk about women's hair and men's hair and all this stuff. Look, if you've got a problem with this, if you've got a problem with it, I have no such custom. I don't want to argue about this. That's essentially what I don't. If someone's got a big problem with it and they shouldn't or they should, it's like, well, we don't have any, we don't have any customs about this. If you really feel like they need to have their hair cut or really need to wear a veil, then just wear, whoever's under your authority, have them do it. We don't have these customs. I don't know where your customs are coming from, blah, 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 blah. And that's just the main verse. This is your key verse for 1 Corinthians 11, verses 1 through 16. We have no such custom. We don't have rules about hair. It's not a Christian thing. There are some churches where women literally will not cut their hair, and their hair goes down to their buttocks. And it's totally unnecessary. And it's not, and in some ways it doesn't even look good because it gets all split-ended and blah, 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 blah. It's healthier to give it a good trim. And it's okay. You can trim your hair. Now, I know I don't want to upset anyone. If your husband says not, well, maybe you shouldn't. But we have no such customs in the churches of God. None that I'm aware of. So there's no need to have a big fight over this. And that'll conclude that part. And we'll pick up verse 17 tomorrow. We're done with hair. That's it. Like I said, there's a lot more I could say about the last couple of verses. It's like I'm full of the subject. That's it. Thanks for joining me today. We will continue in chapter 11 tomorrow. Yeah.
The bands of the wicked have robbed me, but I have not forgotten thy law. At midnight will I rise to give thanks unto thee because of thy righteous judgments, O Lord. I am a companion of all them that fear thee, and of them that keep thy precepts. The earth, O Lord, is full of thy mercy. Teach me thy statutes. Thou hast dealt well with thy servants.